Fancy seeing you here. Hello everyone, welcome to the second TOPinion, the second ever Top Chat opinion piece. My name is Matt, I'm the usual host of the podcast along with Joe. However, today it's just me. As I said, this is a TOPinion video, working title, Joe came up with it, don't hate me for it, where we discuss individually our topics that are dear to our hearts, that we know a reasonable amount about, and just kind of, I don't know, rant and rave for 10 minutes, I guess. There's one up on the channel already, which is Joe's one. He did the first one, and it's about tennis games, because of course he's the only person in the world that actually gives a shit about tennis games. And who could have guessed my first one, as you've already seen from the title, is going to be about Assassin's Creed, because it's my favourite series, I know a decent amount about it, and I wanted to do a kind of a comparison / wish list kind of thing, comparing the early games to the late games, and also what I'd like to see happen next to the series. In the background there you've got some nice little gameplay footage for you to watch. There's a bit of Assassin's Creed 2, and later on we'll have some Odyssey again as like a comparison feature. So what do I want to talk about? Basically the shift. The shift in focus for the games has been huge. It happened in 2016, that was the gap year for Assassin's Creed, so we had Syndicate in 2015, and then Origins in 2017, so we had the year off in 2016 where no game came out, and then Origins came, and it's massively different. The game has become much more RPG focused, there are stats, you can upgrade things, it's basically like The Witcher 3, but set within the Assassin's Creed universe. Or is it? Well, that's kind of something I'm going to go into a bit more later, but what else has changed? So Desmond has died. Sorry, spoilers. There's a lot less focus on the modern day kind of Abstergo storyline, which I think is both a good and bad thing. I didn't like the way that the modern day segments would just pop up randomly every now and then and kind of interrupt your flow. Well, I say randomly, in the early games of course, I'm talking Assassin's Creed 1 and 2, there was a lot more structure. It would be complete a DNA sequence, do a bit of modern day, complete a DNA sequence, and blah blah blah. Then they became a bit more sporadic, and then now they're pretty much non-existent. You can, for example in Odyssey, you can access Layla through the pause menu. How many times have I done that? Not once. I'm 80 hours in now, and I think I've only played about half an hour of modern day stuff just because I don't really like it. But I do kind of miss it in the sense that there was this the theme tying all the games together, which we've kind of now lost a little bit. Anyway, my first point I wanted to make is, and this is getting onto more of the wish list kind of stuff, where do I want the game to be set? Well, I mentioned this recently on the podcast, I can't remember which episode, but I think there's a gap in Assassin's Creed history specifically between games 1 and 2. So of course the first game was set during the Crusades, and then the second game was set in the Italian Renaissance. So you've got 200-ish years there where we had, in the 13th and 14th century, we had the very bloody, the very violent, the Mongol Empire. I don't particularly care if we go down the route of Genghis or Kublai Khan. I think both of them were just tyrannical. Is that how you say that word? I'm not really sure. They were both, murderous bastards, and it would be quite fun to meet them and kind of join them on their rampage across, well, pretty much the entire world. Gameplay-wise, it's been a while since I've actually felt like an assassin. I would go back as far as to say that Assassin's Creed 4, and I mentioned this in my top 10 actually, Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag is where I feel like the game's gameplay shift first started to become apparent. You no longer had to sort of rely on being a stealthy, work in the shadows to serve the light assassin. You had the option of just going in all guns blazing and, just killing everyone that got in your way. That was something that kind of existed from the start. You could have mass fights, where there was like 3 or 4 enemies surrounding you and you had to sword fight them all to death, but it didn't happen anywhere near as often. And if you compare it to now, of course, where you can just run into a fort, activate all your abilities and just kill everybody, the sense of being an actual assassin is pretty much gone. It more plays out like a GTA style scenario where you can choose your approach, which I like, but also it kind of was one of the things that made the series unique, was that you had to be an assassin, you had to be stealthy. But I'm kind of caught in two minds about the whole thing. One area where I'm not caught in two minds is abilities, because I do love the new abilities in Odyssey. They're a bit fantastical, especially with the lightning strike and the overpower thing, where you can get the rage of whatever god it is in you, and you can't be killed, but you do loads of damage. I think they're really cool. I like upgrading them. Yeah, not really much more to say about that, to be honest. I like the fact that it went from being in Assassin's Creed 3, or actually earlier than that, in Brotherhood, it was like you can upgrade your clan of assassins, and then you can upgrade in AC3, you can upgrade the homestead, and then it became the Jackdaw in Assassin's Creed 4, and now it's less about upgrading things around you and more about upgrading everything, which I do think is very cool. Something I touched on a second ago is the combat, which again has changed absolutely hugely, and it would be nice to see the emphasis brought back to, planning your approach and stealthily actually taking out targets and doing actual assassinations, rather than just, oh, there's a cultist over there, just going to run up behind them and boot them off a cliff. As fun as that is, it's not quite assassiny for me. Just a nice little made up word for you there. So maybe that's something I'd like to see brought back. I'm not sure I'd like to see the days of, sitting on a bench and listening to a conversation 5 times in a row. I definitely don't want that brought back, but it would be nice to see more of a tactical, actual planning of assassinations approach, rather than just, there's a target, go and kill him. Another unique aspect of the games I would like brought back is the way that you open up parts of the world. Now, I do love open world games. I love the sense, or rather the option that you have in Odyssey and Origins and so on, to just go anywhere. You don't have to wait for anything to unlock. You don't have to, complete certain tasks for things to unlock. You can just go anywhere, which I like, but it kind of ruins the idea that you're playing a memory. So something that made the series unique was the idea of you complete a DNA sequence and then you unlock a new area. Because the point of it is, of course, that you're playing through a memory of an ancestor, and it's not as if you can rewrite their memory and just go anywhere and do anything you want, except from now you can, which I think was something that they nailed in the early games and something that made it really stand out as a series, and it's gone, so I'd like that brought back. And another thing I'd like brought back is the importance of viewpoints. So viewpoints used to serve as a... the leap of faith and stuff, they used to serve as map defogging mechanics. So you would climb a viewpoint, synchronize, and then a whole portion of the map would be defogged, which was great. Whereas now you just walk into a new area and the entire section is just immediately open, where all the question marks are, where all the, the points of interests. You just know. There's no real need to do the viewpoints other than fast traveling, which links in with where the series has progressed to, in the sense of, it's all completely open world, you can do whatever you want, whenever you want, so it makes sense to have the viewpoints as fast travel points, although to be honest I think they have been for quite some time now, but still, I feel like I just like the defog mechanic brought back. It just adds another reason to do them, really, rather than just entering an area and 600 meters away, not meters, what am I trying to think, 600, I don't know, whatever distance they use to measure. You'd think I'd know after 80 hours, but I can't actually think. But yeah, just walking into an area and being like, oh, that one's really far away, but I know where it is because the game has told me, it just gives you another incentive to actually do those viewpoints. And not to say that I want viewpoints to pop up in every single segment of the map, because that would just get a bit draining. However, make them a bit more required, should we say, because again, it was another unique aspect of the early games, which, while it has retained, and so has the leap of faith and stuff, they're not as important as perhaps they once used to be. And a final note I wanted to make in terms of the comparison of the games is the fact that now, of course, it's very heavily RPG focused. So we have stats, we have numbers, we have, you can compare figures, and there's upgrades, and there's abilities, and there's all tier 4 abilities as compared to tier 3 abilities, blah, 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 blah. And that's all fine and dandy. However, for someone like me, who doesn't get into min-maxing, I don't really bother sitting down and working out the maths of, this one does 0.5% more damage. To me, it's kind of all irrelevant. It's more like box checking, where it's, I've got an upgrade point, I'll increase my dagger damage from 11% to 12%. Will I notice that difference? No, to be honest, I won't. Maybe that just comes down to me as a player, but I feel like if we're going to go down the path, or well, pretty much already set off down the path of being an RPG series, make them matter, make them more relevant, make them more obvious, and just, I don't know, give us a reason to actually be like, oh, this one does, 2.5% more damage than this one. I'm obviously going to keep it. Whereas at the moment, I feel like I don't notice those differences. That was a really terrible example, because if something says it on paper, I mean, you're going to believe it anyway. But hopefully you know what I mean. I would just like the stats and the figures to actually mean something, because on a surface level, they kind of don't. And also, going back to the viewpoints for a second, when you synchronize a viewpoint and it says, oh, Senu or Icarus's perception has increased, that's like a crucial part of the game, really, because when you then use the bird to scout locations for you, obviously the more you play, the more viewpoints you synchronize, the better they get at doing it. But for something that is actually kind of noticeable, it's one of the few things that doesn't have a stat associated to it. It just tells you, it just says, oh yeah, they've got better at that now. So okay, but how much better? And there are still kind of issues where Icarus doesn't find things that I think, he should be able to. But anyway, that's a different what am I trying to say? That's just a different issue I have with the game entirely. Anyway, how long have I been going for now? Oh, just over 10 minutes. Excellent. Well, if you agree with any of my points, if you disagree, let me know in the comments. Go and check out Joe's video on tennis games if you can be bothered. I'm not going to lie, I haven't listened to it. No, I'm kidding, I have listened to it, because he kind of bags me out at the end. But anyway, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the gameplay. There'll be more of these soon. And of course, there'll be a podcast going up in a few days. Thanks very much, everyone. Bye for now.